You probably heard about the Israel-Gaza war in terms of casualties, ceasefire deals, and political pressure. That framing makes sense on the surface. But underneath it, something almost nobody is talking about is quietly dying. A trade corridor worth $300 billion, a route that was supposed to rewire the entire global economy. And right now, it is on life support. This is the story of IMEC, the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Corridor, and why a war that most people think is about land and politics is actually about something far bigger. Your supply chains, your energy prices, your country's ability to compete with China for the next 50 years. Let's go back to September 2023. World leaders gathered in New Delhi for the G20 summit. The mood was electric. India, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel, and the European Union had just signed a memorandum of understanding for a new trade route. One that would connect Mumbai to Rotterdam without a single ship passing through the Suez Canal or the Strait of Hormuz. Goods would move by rail across Saudi Arabia and Jordan, then by sea from the Israeli port of Haifa to Greece and onward into Europe. The White House called it a real big deal. The Financial Times called it the most ambitious infrastructure project of the decade. For one brief moment, it looked like the world had found a genuine alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Then, 37 days later, Hamas attacked Israel, and everything changed. Here is the mechanism you need to understand. IMEC does not just pass near Israel, it passes through Israel. The port of Haifa is not a symbolic waypoint, it is the linchpin of the entire western leg of the corridor. Without Haifa, cargo coming overland from Saudi Arabia and Jordan has nowhere to go. There is no detour. There is no backup port. The architecture of IMEC was deliberately built around Haifa because it offered the deepest natural harbor in the eastern Mediterranean, existing rail connections inland, and Israeli logistics infrastructure that could handle the volume. Remove Haifa from the equation and you do not have a corridor. You have an unfinished road that stops at the water's edge. And right now, Haifa is not the problem most people focus on. The problem is the politics surrounding every country Haifa sits inside. No Arab government that signed onto IMEC can publicly celebrate a project tied to Israel, while Israeli military operations in Gaza are running on the front page of every newspaper from Cairo to Riyadh. The Abraham Accords, which normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states and provided the political foundation for IMEC to exist, are under extraordinary pressure. Saudi Arabia, the single most important land bridge in the entire corridor, had not yet formally normalized relations with Israel at the time of the G20 signing. That normalization was expected to follow. It has not. According to the Council on Foreign Relations, the Saudi-Israeli normalization deal, which the Biden administration was brokering in the months before October 7th, collapsed entirely after the Gaza offensive began. Without that deal, Saudi Arabia has no domestic political cover to deepen infrastructure ties with Israel. And without Saudi Arabia's rail network crossing the Arabian Peninsula, IMEC is not a corridor. It is a concept paper. This is the geopolitical trap. Every country that signed IMEC needs the others to make it work.
So what is the
India needs Saudi Arabia's land bridge. Saudi Arabia needs Israeli port access. Israel needs Arab political goodwill that the war has spent down to nearly zero. And Europe needs all of it to function at once, reliably, across a region that is currently anything but reliable. Meanwhile, China is watching, carefully. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative, the infrastructure network China has spent over $1 trillion building across Asia, Africa, and Europe, was directly threatened by IMEC's announcement. For the first time, the United States and its partners had put a credible, funded, multilateral alternative on the table. Analysts at Chatham House noted that IMEC represented the most serious strategic challenge to BRI since its launch in 2013. Then October 7th happened, and that challenge evaporated almost overnight. China did not need to do anything. The region did it for them. You might be thinking, so what? Trade routes change. Ships reroute. The global economy adapts. Here is why that framing is wrong. This is not about one trade route. This is about who controls the infrastructure layer of the 21st century economy. The country or coalition that builds the rails, the ports, the undersea cables, and the energy pipelines gets to set the terms of trade for everyone who uses them. They decide the fees. They decide the access. They decide who gets cut off when the next crisis hits. China understood this in 2013 when it launched BRI. The United States and its partners understood it in 2023 when they announced IMEC. And right now, in 2025, the window to build a Western-aligned alternative is closing faster than almost anyone in Washington or Brussels is publicly admitting. Every month IMEC sits stalled, China's infrastructure position in the region consolidates. Chinese companies are building ports in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and the UAE. Chinese investment in Gulf energy infrastructure has deepened since the war began. And according to research from the Middle East Institute, several Gulf states that were leaning toward IMEC as a framework for economic diversification have quietly shifted back toward hedging between Washington and Beijing, waiting to see who can actually deliver. The human cost of the war in Gaza is staggering and should never be reduced to an economic calculation. But the geopolitical cost is also real, and almost nobody is adding it up. A $300 billion corridor, 5 years of diplomatic groundwork, the first genuine post-BRI infrastructure alternative. All of it sitting in a waiting room, watching a war that was supposed to be a regional crisis become a global strategic inflection point. Here is what this means for you specifically. The price of everything you import from Asia already spiked when Houthi attacks in the Red Sea forced container ships to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks to shipping times and hundreds of millions of dollars in fuel costs that eventually showed up in the price you paid for electronics, clothing, and furniture. IMEC was supposed to be the answer to that vulnerability, a land and sea bridge that bypassed the Red Sea choke point entirely. That answer is still waiting. Your phone, your car, your grocery bill, the energy price your country pays, all of it sits downstream of decisions being made right now about who builds the infrastructure of the next 50 years, and who gets to use it, on whose terms, at what cost. In September 2023, world leaders stood in New Delhi and announced that the answer to China's infrastructure dominance had finally arrived. 37 days later, the war began, and that answer has been waiting ever since.